Yo, what is going on, Comfy Gang? It's your boy Comfy Neat here. So today's video is also going to be fairly depressing, maybe even a bit scary, but I guess a lot of needs will probably be able to relate to it. And basically, I'm going to be talking about cognitive decline. So cognitive decline is not necessarily, it can happen at any stage of NEETdom, but I feel like it starts to manifest slightly after the 2-year mark when you cross that event horizon, and will start to experience basically this feeling that you've become stupider. And as each, I was gonna say year, but even like as each month passes, I feel like you will feel this more and more, and it'll slowly start to creep up on you. And I feel like this will reach its peak when you start to hit when you become a late stage NEET, which I'd say begins at the 4-year mark, and past the 6-year mark. This is where maybe 6, 7-year mark. This is where you start to enter into hikikomori status. I feel like the natural evolution of most NEETs is to become a hikikomori, but this is where you start to experience potentially the greatest levels of cognitive decline. Obviously, each individual is different. We all have different genetic predispositions, so take what I say with a grain of salt. What I talk about here might not necessarily apply to you, but I feel like it does apply to a decent portion of NEETs, and if anything, it at least applies to me. So yeah, maybe I'm just projecting my misery and fear onto other people, but that's not really my intention, or is it? Okay, that's a joke. But anyways, yeah. So by cognitive decline, I'm basically referring to the, I guess, decrease in a lot of the quote unquote cognitive or mental function. I think mental is probably a better word to use because it's more relatable. Like, for example, your ability to recall information, your ability to understand concepts of varying complexity. Obviously, the more cognitively sound you are, the more complex the ideas you will probably entertain and think about, as well as your ability to understand things like philosophy and more difficult literature, movies with more subtext, as well as, not just your mental abilities, like your reaction time, your mostly memory, to be honest, but because that's, I think, the hallmark of the quote unquote intelligence, but also things like social intelligence, EQ, emotional acuity, your ability to control, regulate, as well as, be aware of your own emotions, your ability to socialize. Did I already say that? And your kinesthetic potential, your ability to control your body, your kinesthetic awareness, your awareness of bodily states, and all these things that are basically regulated by the brain that may not necessarily fall under IQ, but are basically also, I guess, a form of intelligence, because pretty much all your behaviors are governed by different various systems in the brain, and are capable of, mostly are capable of development through training and whatnot. But my point in saying all that is that, yes, the decline of any or all of these functions are probably signifiers of cognitive decline. So firstly, I guess this begs the question, what is my experience with cognitive decline? Why the hell would a 25-year-old make a video about something that dementia patients should be experiencing? Well, the reason for this is because recently, and for a long time, as a lot of NEETs do, I have felt that I have become stupider and stupider with the passage of time. And I'm not sure if this is a product of age or the decline of society, but I think while these things do play a part, I feel like my NEET lifestyle is definitely not helping things. And I think it is a large driving factor in my cognitive decline. And or if not, it may be accelerating the natural processes that lead to cognitive decline. So the reason I say this is because, well, back in high school, back when I quote unquote peaked in life, I honestly, and I don't mean to brag, I honestly, at that time at least, did consider myself pretty smart, because while I wasn't the most hardworking student, while I was fairly lazy and basically procrastinated and played a lot of video games and browser games, all these wastes of time, binge YouTube, listen to music on SoundCloud because I wanted to be unique and all that. Um, I basically didn't put a lot of time into my studying, and yet I actually did pretty good. I guess I took this sort of like accelerated program. Well, not that makes it sound fancier than it is. Basically, the IB diploma program, and I basically procrastinated throughout my entire high school, and despite that, I still got good grades. And I remember during that time, I was able to do things like cram study and, just skim over textbooks or just have verbal diarrhea, vomit words onto a page the night before an assignment was due, literally like 4 or 5 hours before a paper was due, and turn something in. And despite all this, my test grades were good, my written assignment grades were good, and my GPA was honestly pretty good. And I don't mean that like by Asian standards, it was pretty good. Like my parents were happy with my grades. And well, during that time, I don't remember I don't remember experiencing any of the sort of, things, cognitive decline symptoms I experience now. The only thing really was that I had a harder time remembering dates and names than, I guess, all other types of information. I struggled with math, but other than that, I feel like I was pretty solid academically and mentally. But ever since I, started smoking weed in college, that's when I first started to notice the signs of what I would consider cognitive decline. Basically, the things like the tip of the tongue phenomenon, where you basically are trying to remember something, and you know that you know it, but it just doesn't come. And there's like a mental barrier in between you and that piece of information that you want to recall. And this even happens in my videos, for example, where sometimes I'll have a list of several things in my head that I sort of pre-planned while I'm shooting the video, and all of a sudden I'll just lose my train of thought, and then all these things that were in my head a while ago, they just disappear, and it's not like I can recall them. It's like I have to like wait a bit, or sometimes they never even come back. So I think I never used to experience any of these things, but my point in saying this is that was like the first signs of it. But I feel like after becoming NEET, they started to become more and more pronounced, where, I'd have even harder time remembering names and concepts and things like that. The type of content that I used to consume, I used to be into all these sort of like philosophical ideas, politics, like things like the zeitgeist movement, and, speculating on, human nature and the nature of emotions and all that sort of quote unquote deep stuff, which I don't even think is that deep anymore. But it's just, well, I guess it is it's definitely cognitively demanding for sure. And I feel like while I used to be interested in that sort of stuff, that used to be primarily the types of things that I was interested in. Well, what am I interested in now? Fucking moe anime, moe anime girls. I'm VTubers. I'm in VTuber hell, which is basically moe heaven. The pointless YouTube videos, watching other NEETs like myself talk about their life, and all this sort of random vapid BS that's basically as mentally stimulating as staring at a rock. In fact, I'm pretty sure staring at a rock would be more mentally stimulating, given that that's probably akin to meditation, and what I'm doing is just mindlessly consuming information. But I feel like even that is a signifier of my cognitive decline, because the difficulty of the material that I'm trying to consume is becoming, less and less cognitively difficult to consume. I used to be a lot more eloquent in the past, and I used to be able to string together coherent sentences, especially when I wasn't nervous. But I find that harder and harder to do nowadays. And it's not just the mental stuff, like I was saying. My social skills have were already kind of bad, and now they have vastly deteriorated to the point where I can't look people in the eye anymore. I can't I can't reply with more than 1 or 2 word answers most of the time. I have a hard time keeping track of who to make icon, all these little social intricacies that my brain used to be able to do, at least to a small degree. I've lost the ability to do that. My strength, which is another side, because what's it called? The efficiency at which your brain can recruit your peripheral or central nervous system. Your central nervous system can recruit your peripheral nervous system. Your ability to lift large amounts of weight. I used to be able to lift a decent amount. I wasn't a strong man or anything, but I could at least lift way more than I can now. Now I can't even do like push-ups with proper form. I can only do like those like shitty, like half-assed, not recruiting the chest push-ups. And yeah, so all of these things are my, I guess, experience with cognitive decline, and it definitely is getting worse and worse with the passage of time. So this begs the question, what is causing this cognitive decline? Why do NEETs sometimes experience cognitive decline? And is there a way to prevent this? I guess the way to prevent this is basically doing the opposite of everything that I just said. Do all that. Basically, at least try and move around a bit, but I'll get into that in a bit. So basically, the reason for this is basically, I guess, is might seem kind of a stretch, but in my opinion, it makes sense, because recently, the inspiration for this video was the fact that I watched this sort of video about this other musical work called, I actually have it up right now. It's called The Caretaker, Everywhere at the End of Time. And it's basically a 6-hour musical work, which I didn't listen to, by the way, but I listened to like parts of it. But it's basically this musical work that's meant to portray the various stages of mental decline in people with dementia. And what's interesting about this work is that it has a bunch of I guess written descriptions of each stage at the different time markers. So for example, I'll just read a few for you guys. Stage 1, here we experience the first signs of memory loss. This stage is most like a beautiful daydream, the glory of old age and recollection, the last of the great days. So doesn't that sound familiar already? Don't a lot of NEETs like to sort of like reminisce on their childhood, back when they were playing, Pokemon on their Game Boy Advance or Game Boy SP, sitting in front of the TV playing fucking Pokemon, or back when things were still entertaining, and reliving those glory days. Basically, that sounds like a lot of NEETs, to be honest. And obviously that's also normal, because I guess it makes sense given that a lot of us don't really have any memories positive or happy memories outside of those like precious childhood days. Let's look at the next stage. Stage 2. The second stage is the self-realization that awareness that something is wrong with a refusal to accept that. More effort is made to remember, so memories can be more long form with a little more deterioration in quality. The overall personal mood is generally lower than the first stage, and at a point before confusion starts setting in. So while not all that might be relevant, I feel like a lot of it is like this sensation that something might be wrong, that maybe I'm starting to slowly become cognizant of this cognitive decline that I'm experiencing, hence the making of this video. Also this idea of the mood becoming lower, perhaps I'm becoming a bit more concerned, a bit more anxious about this. Also, it explains why my mood as of late has started to decline overall. And it is true that the memories, I'm starting to remember less and less things from my past, only those key, I guess, hallmark important memories that form my identity. But everything else, the little nuances of the past, I'm starting to lose my grip on those, and they're starting to fade away from my mind, from my, I guess, basically from, as far as I'm concerned, existence, because if I can't remember it, then it basically doesn't exist from on a subjective level. Let's go to stage 3. Here we are presented with some of the last coherent memories before confusion fully rolls in and gray mists form and fade away. Finest moments have been remembered. The musical flow in places is more confused. Again, that's referring to the music. As we progress, some singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, and broken and distant. These are the last embers of awareness before we enter the post-awareness stage. So maybe I'm already at the stage, like, for example, maybe because really my memories of the past are really relegated to a select few. Well, maybe I'm just being a hypochondriac, but I feel like there definitely are parallels to be drawn between cognitive decline of NEETs, at least me, and dementia patients. And, singular memories become more disturbed, isolated, broken. Maybe this could explain the sort of the sort of decrease in mood, the depression, the onset of depression, the anxiety, the anger, the rage, the resentment, because possibly we're starting to lose our, not only are we maybe remembering less positive memories because the brain tends to have a negativity bias, but also perhaps we are losing our grip on our grip on reality. Hence, if you look at a lot of the really, really late stage NEETs, like for example, the best example of this would be Christian Weston Chandler, aka Chris Chan, aka the OG NEET YouTuber. You can sort of see this decline in his mental well-being, and he's arguably even schizophrenic right now, which is relevant for the 4th stage, which is the post-awareness stages, the 4th and 5th stage and the 6th stage, which is the post-awareness stage. Like, for example, stage 4, where serenity and the ability to recall singular memory gives way to confusions and horror. Okay, maybe this is going a bit too far, but I feel like I've seen videos of NEETs or hikikomoris that clearly display signs of, for lack of a better term, craziness, mental illness. Maybe this sort of cognitive decline and mental illness and the development of various mental illnesses are interrelated, possibly. Obviously, again, take this on an individual by individual basis, but yeah. And yeah, the 5th stage, should I read that? Shit, I just almost knocked on my keyboard. Yeah, just confusion, horror, most extreme entanglements. So maybe this is like the full onset of, things like schizophrenia. Maybe this explains, why a lot of hikikomoris are that way, because they are, I guess, are basically late stage NEETs. And, I feel like being hikikomori is a natural progression of NEETdom, if that makes sense. And post-awareness stage 6 is without description. So that's kind of scary, but yeah. So my point in saying all that and reading all that is that there are definitely parallels between the cognitive decline in NEETs and dementia patients. And the reason this is interesting is because the conditions by which this cognitive decline occurs in older people that leads to this cognitive decline, that leads to dementia, are the same, conditions that a lot of NEETs experience. And the reason I say this is because in university, I took this class called Psychology and Aging. And one of the key interesting facts I learned is that a lot of older people will lose their hearing at some point. And what's interesting is that the loss of hearing is highly correlated with a decline in cognitive function, especially if the older individual, I'm losing my voice, doesn't use hearing aids. And this is the reason for this is because older people will get fed up with younger people, shouting at them just so they can be heard. And, not only that, but using this sort of infantilizing speech, talking to the older person as if they're retarded just because they can't hear. And what ends up happening is that the older person will end up avoiding social interaction, will trend towards isolation. Does that sound kind of familiar? will trend towards isolation, social isolation, and as a result, their cognition will start to decline. And things like when tested in all sorts of metrics like reaction time, memory tests, verbal abilities. I don't remember the entire battery of tests in the studies that I was taught because I learned this so long ago. But basically, the performance declined rapidly at an alarming rate. And, it certainly accounts for things like dementia, and as they say in that class, your brain, it's either you use it, or you lose it, especially in older age. But I'd argue even in younger age. And what was I going to say? And yeah, as far as like the socializing goes, the reason for this is because, human beings are social creatures. And, what sets us apart from primates, at least one theory stipulates, is that human beings are capable of social learning to a vast degree. And we're also the only species to live in such vast, the vast sort of like networks of individuals, like these large tribes. Obviously, ants are the same way, except that human beings are vastly more cognitively complex than ants. So because of that, all sorts of mind games and intricacies of, socially interacting with people. And, in fact, the vast majority of our brain function has evolved so that we could navigate social environments. And when we don't use these brain areas by, trending towards social isolation, or even only interacting with people online, which I guess better than nothing, but it's definitely a lot easier than talking to someone in real life. There's a lot less going on. No facial expressions, no body language, no, intonation, all that complex stuff. And because of that, I feel like NEETs will, they don't get the full cognitive stimulation of talking to people, and therefore they start to, these areas of the brain start to atrophy. And when they atrophy, they basically experience cognitive decline to a large degree, because the things that we consider classic signifiers of intelligence play a huge role in social interaction. Therefore, because of this overlap, and because obviously this is all just a theory, but I think it is true to a large extent that a lot of our, I guess, quote unquote, cognitive abilities are, have evolved specifically for, or at least in part alongside with, socially interacting with people. So yeah, that's the mechanism, or the, I guess, reason why not socializing with people leads to cognitive decline. And NEETs, they trend towards social isolation because of, I guess, pre-existing mental illness, perhaps genetic predispositions towards it, and all these other factors, resentment, what's the term? Misanthropy, being a misanthrope, and all that. And yeah, so because that's just one example of the conditions, that, I guess, that's the primary mechanism, in my opinion, that explains cognitive decline. That's the lack of socializing, which is, a situation that a lot of NEETs find themselves in. Some other mechanisms might be the lack of exercise, because exercise is one of the few instances that promotes neurogenesis, which is the creation of brain cells in the brain, and it's in the hippocampus specifically, which is an area of the brain that's responsible for regulating both short-term and long-term memory. Look, my memory's fucked right now, but I'm also just resting my voice. Give me a second. I can drink some water. Sorry about that. Excuse me. I'm a fucking degenerate heathen, but yeah, exercise, basically promotes brain growth. And after you hit the age of 25, it gets even worse, because that's when your brain fully stops growing and starts quote unquote dying. Although that might be just pop psychology, but yeah. Anyways, my point is that when you don't exercise, there's also a lot of areas of the brain that are recruited during exercise. So it's feasible that by not exercising, even more areas of the brain, start to decline. And when you couple that with social isolation, then it's like basically this interconnected web of, gradual progression to being a retard and eventually possibly even crazy. How great does that sound? So, okay, this is pretty dark, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to laugh about it, but it's honestly a pretty dark topic. And yeah, so another thing is, what else? Exercise. Again, even just like the type of content we consume, obviously there's a type of content we consume, influence us and make us stupider. For example, me watching so much moe anime. I don't know, I like it, so I'm not going to stop, but what else? Or is it the other way around where the content we consume changes and becomes progressively more and more vapid because of cognitive decline? This is like a chicken and the egg sort of scenario. We don't really know which comes first, but there's definitely a bi-directional causal relationship between the two, in my opinion. A positive feedback loop of negative cognitive, performance, if that makes sense, cognitive development, degeneration, de-evolution, just shit basically. So, yeah, it's pretty dark. But yeah, so how can you avoid this? I'm not saying to go get a job, but I think there are procedures, some stopgaps, if you will, that can maybe at least slow the rate of cognitive decline. And, I don't think, okay, obviously telling a NEET to go out socializing might be a feasible plan for some. So if you don't have social anxiety or severe Asperger's and, are capable of doing this, try to maintain real life friends, not just online friends on Discord, but real life friends, and, maybe experience the benefits of interacting normally like that. I'm not saying to go to the gym and be a gym bro. Those days are over, especially for me. But at least trying to walk around the block. Don't just sit in your chair all day. I know I'm guilty of this, so that's something that I'm going to be trying to do. Maybe not exercise just for the sake of becoming jacked and, attracting women, which I'll probably never have, or, impressing people just simply for the sake of my health, and I feel like other people would be wise to do the same, just do push-ups, or if you like a physical activity, like playing a sport, if that's a thing, then you could probably do that. You don't even have to be good at it. Just get your heart rate up, walk around the block, and, throw up gang signs. Okay, that's a joke. Like, I don't know why I said that. It's stupid. What else? What else? You can maybe try and read books more. But basically, don't just sit in front of, okay, obviously, maybe most NEETs kind of want to end it anyways, kind of want to rope. So I'm pretty sure a lot of NEETs don't actually give a crap about cognitive decline, but I'm just leaving these options out there for NEETs who don't want to experience this and obviously, most NEETs are probably not going to reach the stage of Chris Chan, but it's possible. And, once you lose these gains, these cognitive abilities, you might not necessarily get them back. Hence, it'll close off options like going back to school, because I tried going back to school after being NEET for a year, and I was just absolutely retarded. I couldn't do any of the things that I used to be able to do, like cram studies. So, again, I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't do one thing or the other. I'm just leaving these options out there in case especially if you're a young NEET, it's something to consider. If you hate society and want to check out, then by all means, go ahead. I'm maybe at that stage partly, but if you want to quote unquote ascend, maybe maybe NEETdom is not for you, then that's just something to be considered about. Anyways, this is a pretty long video. It's actually fucking 30-minute video. Wow. So probably going to end it here. But anyways, hope you guys found this entertaining and informative. If you have related to this in any way or have any opinions on cognitive decline, your own experiences and whatnot, please make sure to leave a comment in the comment section down below. This is NEET signing out, and peace.